let's say I adopted a cat and he was very addicted to kibble. That's all he wants to eat. What would I do? How would I get that cat from kibble to wet or raw? Ideally raw. In my situation, I would go all the way to raw. I'm going to say the first best case scenario, my first option would be to transition from dry food to freeze-dried raw. And I would start with freeze-dried raw first because it's crunchy and it resembles kibble. So this is a nice way to get a little sneaky, and it looks like kibble and it is crunchy like kibble. So what I would do is not rehydrate it at first. Obviously, ideally, your cat would be eating a high moisture food. But in the beginning, to get your cat used to eating it first, I would put it down and not rehydrate it. So let's say I was feeding 30 pieces of kibble. I would put down 29 pieces of kibble and 1 piece of freeze-dried raw on day 1. Day 2, I would do 28 pieces of kibble, 2 pieces of freeze-dried raw. Day 3, 27 and 3. You see where I'm going with this. So each day, gradually add tiny bit more of the freeze-dried raw and take out equal parts of the dry food. Then, once my cat's getting used to it and is accepting it, want to get him used to eating that wet, mushy texture. We want to get our cats to eat wet or raw. In my case, I would go to raw. So what I would do is very slowly rehydrate the freeze-dried raw. So again, the same thing, like 1 drop of water, day 1, 2 drops of water, day 2, like literally baby steps. Like if the cat was really resistant, that's literally what I would do. Take those baby steps and just take it day by day. So brands that I would start with, brands that I've already used are Raw Paws Pet Food, freeze-dried raw, or Feline Natural freeze-dried raw. I've used both of them. I'm not sponsored by any company, but there are affiliate links to these products in the description. Now, I personally think that Raw Paws Pet Food freeze-dried complete food is better because there are very minimal synthetic supplements, especially their beef, because there's a lot of variety in the meat ingredients. The only thing that they add is vitamin E to preserve the food. But Feline Natural is still a great option because they have a lot of variety. I actually still feed Jericho some of their freeze-dried treats. Give me a polydactyl thumbs up if this is helpful so far so more cat parents that want to feed their cat better can find this video. Thank you. So now let's say that didn't work. I tried freeze-dried raw. I tried that very slow transition plan. It didn't work. My cat still only wants to eat dry food. The next best thing would be to try air-dried food because technically this is cooked, but it's still better quality ingredients. And it looks kind of like kibble because it's dried and it kind of has that same shape. The texture might be a little different. It might be a bit chewier, but there are some synthetic supplements added to it since it's cooked. So they have to add back some of those nutrients. Since there's similar synthetic supplements probably in the dry food, it might be a smoother transition because it is technically a step down from freeze-dried raw. And the brands that I would use are New Zealand Natural Pet Food Co. because they have more meat-based ingredients compared to the second brand that I would try, Kiwi Kitchens. They also have an air-dried food. And so my first pick would be New Zealand Natural, but if that doesn't work, then I would use Kiwi Kitchens. I used to talk about 𝐤𝐄𝐄𝐄, and my mom actually used their air-dried food to get her 4 cats from kibble to better quality and then to wet and raw. But recently, 𝐤𝐄𝐄𝐄 was bought out by another company, and I'm always wary about those things. I mean, for the time being, I wouldn't be feeding it long-term anyway because my goal is to get to raw. So it would just be a transition food. So if 𝐤𝐄𝐄𝐄 does work for you, then I would say go for it. But I would also check the website and also check the label to make sure that nothing changes. And I would really stay on top of it while you're using it as a transition food. So let's say I tried the same transition plan. I tried freeze-dried raw. I tried air-dried food. Neither of those things worked. The last resort that I would do, and again, let me be clear, I would not feed any type of dry food to any cat long term. This is purely just transition food to get better and better quality so that I can transition to raw. So what I would do is use a better quality dry food. That way I can get the cat used to eating better quality ingredients, and then that will help make a smoother transition to raw. And the brand that I would use first is called Dr. Elsie's Clean Protein. And I'm not impressed with the ingredients itself, but it's very, very low in carbohydrates. Their products are about 4%, 5% carbs on a dry matter basis, approximately. And that's ideal right there. So the ingredients might not be the best. There's not a lot of meat-based ingredients. There's a very long list of synthetic supplements. But the fact that it's very, very low carbohydrates will work in my favor. So I want my cat to kick the carb-rich kibble, right, and get onto a more meat-heavy protein rather than relying on the starchy ingredients and, continuing that addiction. So I would use this brand, and I would do one of the products that says recipe in the name and avoid the one that says with salmon, because that word recipe means that there's going to be more of those meat ingredients. And I would choose a protein that the cat's already eating, because that might make the transition smoother. Now, the second one that I would try is Origin, and it kind of has the opposite pros and cons of Dr. Elsie's. So Origin has a lot of meat ingredients. They're specifically named. There's a lot of variety both in the proteins and the cuts of the meat. So there's muscle meat, there's organs like heart, and then there's also the secreting organs like liver and kidney and spleen. They use a lot of variety, but the carb amount is still really high. So the approximate carbs on pretty much all of their dry cat foods is around 25%. Now that's an approximate, but when you look at the ingredients, you can see that there are some veggies and other ingredients that might contribute to the carb content. Now that's still lower than the average that I've found. The average that I've found among dry foods is 33%, and the highest that I've seen is 49%. So 25% is still a step up, and especially because they use specifically named meat ingredients and a lot of variety. So I think that this would still be a good transition food. Again, transition food, not long-term food, because the moisture is still way too low. And I go much deeper into my transition plan right over 𝐤𝐄𝐄. It's specifically formulated for picky cats that are eating dry food and you want to feed wet or raw. Thanks for watching.